Hi witches. So today I wanted to talk about the importance of doing the mundane things before you do the magical things, and this will make more sense as I explain further in the video. But first I did want to say that there is a content warning because I will touch on topics such as domestic violence and mental illness, health issues such as fertility and broken bones, and a few other things. Not in depth, but they are worth mentioning just in case you need to avoid them. Okay, so the reason that I'm doing this video is because I see surprisingly frequently people asking for spells for things that they really shouldn't be asking for spells for as their first course of action. So, for example, I've seen people ask for spells to stop their partner abusing them. I've seen spells for people wanting to heal their pets without having to take them to the vet. So things like that. I've seen things like people saying that they have an illness and what spells they have to help cure that illness before they see a doctor. Things like that. And so it's something that needs to be said, even though it does seem like a bit of a common sense thing. And I think part of the reason is that obviously people come to magic because they are desperate, but it doesn't mean that we neglect doing the more mundane things. So first and foremost, if your health or safety is at risk, you need to do the non-magical thing. So whether that is seeing a doctor or contacting the police or going to a mental health professional or whoever is the appropriate person to speak to given the situation, you need to speak to those people and those services first. Okay? Magic is not a replacement for the mundane. I'm going to say that again. Magic is not a replacement for the mundane. Okay, it is not a replacement for seeing a doctor, for seeing a therapist, for seeing a counselor, for seeing the police, for calling an ambulance, for anything like that, okay? Now, this doesn't mean that magic can't help in those situations, but that it should not be the first thing that you do. You need to work with the mundane. So I'm going to give you an example, okay? Because magic can support, but it shouldn't be the first thing that you do. So if you were to break your leg, what would you do? Most people would go to hospital or see a doctor, and they would get the appropriate medical treatment, okay? Afterwards, you might then want to do a spell to assist in faster recovery, for quick healing, for bringing healing energy your way, okay? That's fine. But the first thing you would do is see a doctor, okay? So that's how you work with the mundane before the magical. Now, I use that example because most people know to do that. Most people know that if you break your leg, you go see a doctor. But as I mentioned in some of those examples before, people don't always think about that when it comes to other things, such as, people being abusive towards them, such as mental health, such as physical health if it's considered not as severe, things like that. But you really do need to be working with the mundane first for all of those things. Okay. Another one I commonly see, it'll be people asking for things like help with fertility before they've seen a doctor. So these are all serious situations and they do need a professional to see you first. Okay. Now, I also want to say that I understand that there are parts of the world where people don't have access to these services, and I'm not saying that those people shouldn't be seeking out magic and things like that. But if you have access to these services and these professionals where you live, they should be the first thing that you do before magic. Okay, now you might be asking yourself, but why not start with magic? Why do you have to start with the mundane? Why can't you start with magic first and then do that second? Now, the reason for this is magic can only work within the realms of possibility. Now, I know that this is a subjective thing to say. I tend to be more of the logical kind of scientific side of things. I know that some people do believe miracles can happen with magic. I personally don't. I think magic is not a miracle work. It can only work within the realms of possibility. So here's an example. Let's say you want a new job. You cast a spell to get a new job. Okay, that's the magic. If you're not doing any of the mundane things like handing out your resume, emailing people, letting people in your social circle know that you're searching for a job, any of those mundane things, your chances of getting a job are slim to none, because then the only way you'll get a job is if someone by chance knocks on your door and says, hey, I've got a job for you. So this is why you need to do the mundane things first, and then you can do magic to strengthen that and support that, okay? Don't do magic first, because it's not going to have anything to latch onto to strengthen, if that makes sense. Now, I am also going to make another video on realistic magic, because that's something else that's kind of been brought into my sphere of consciousness recently, that there are people out there which are claiming that magic can do absolutely amazing, fantastical things. And I know this isn't a new concept. There have been charlatans around for as long as time has existed. But I think that given my perspective as someone that is more kind of logical, coming at things from a kind of scientific perspective, I think it's really important to mention that, because I do see people which ask things like, well, is my magic still successful if I'm not rich? So I'm going to do another video on that. But first, I really wanted to do this video because it is really important. So there are things that you need to do before you do spells. Now, I'm not just going to leave this as a don't do this video. I am going to offer you some suggestions and ideas as well. Okay, so after you've done all of the mundane things, and if you still want magic to support the mundane things that you've done, there is a book that I recommend which does have some spells and workings, particularly for those like tough times in your life. And so the book is called Spells for Tough Times, Crafting Hope When Faced with Life's Thorniest Challenges by Kerri. And this was a book which was suggested to me by a friend, and I looked at the table of contents and saw some of the spells that were in there, and I decided to immediately buy it on ebook. So I'll give you some of the examples of spells that are in there. So some of the spells that they have in here are for things like, I'm having trouble concentrating, I am overly sensitive and I don't know what to do, I'm overly sensitive and I know it, but I can't seem to stop it, I need to stop procrastinating, I'm always sad, I feel like everything I do turns out wrong, I keep having nightmares, my child has separation anxiety, my child isn't doing well in school, my child's behavior is challenging, my family refuses to accept my religious or spiritual choices, my spouse is cheating on me. There's spells to do with mental illness. There's a whole lot of ones for like family and children. There's ones for relationships, not just significant others. But there's a whole lot. There's things like for when you're going through divorce, things like when you've broken up with someone, things like when best friends stop being best friends. There's a whole lot of different ones in here. There's even a section for pets. My pets fight with each other all the time. My cat stopped using the litter box. It's literally just like the A to Z of spells for bad situations. There's ones for health. There's ones for house and home. There's ones for career and work life. There's just an absolute ton of spells. There's ones for finances, legal problems, to do with healing the environment. There's ones for coping with death. Like literally, this is just the go-to book when someone asks for a spell for something. I usually just look in that book. So that's Spells for Troubled Times by Kerri. Highly recommend that. But yeah, make sure that before you do spells or any kind of magical workings, you're doing all the mundane things that you possibly can first. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed this little ranty video. Let me know if you have similar thoughts on this kind of thing, if you've also seen it pop up where people are asking for spells when they haven't done any of the mundane things first. Yeah, well, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.